Okay, then we'll go ahead and get started. I hope you all had time to look at the draft too, which just had the comments that we made during the meeting last month. And I want to just go through as quickly as we can. We don't need to rewrite the thing on the spot. We just mostly want to go through and talk about questions and things that need to be added. And I think one thing that needs to be added is a fleshing out of the percentage proposal, the pros and cons of that. And then at some point, I'd like to see, after we do all that, just a straw poll of which way do you think we ought to be recommending, even though we'll give both options, which ways do you lean? And I think we can kind of do a little bit of that today because we haven't really hit the percentage yet. So anything else before we start looking at it that people would like to see done today in terms of that proposal? Okay. I'm going to share screen. That's the agenda. That would not be good. Okay, hold on. Okay.
So would it be helpful just as we're managing like our kind of the discourse here today, is it helpful for us to add comments into the Google Doc?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like in real time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what I would like to see doing. Okay, so here is the point that we kind of stopped last time. And once we go through this, I think some people have comments on the part that we talked about last month, and we can go back up to that. But I'd like to kind of power our way through this first so that we at least have a once over of it. Also, if you have a comment, want to say something, when I put this up on the screen, I have a hard time seeing more than two of you. So if you have something to say, as long as it doesn't get out of control, just, raise your hand or just talk, okay? Rather than trying to raise your hand and hope that I see you.
Joe, can I make a quick question or comment?
Yep.
Maybe as we go through this, I think just keeping in mind, like, if there are issues with wording on a particular bullet or section, I think we can deal with that like offline after the call. We can always make the wording better. I think the key for us to get through this kind of efficiently is, are there areas where we have material errors? Are there areas that are incorrect? Are there issues that we have not put in yet? And if we can kind of focus on those types of things, I think we'll probably be able to move on a little faster.
Yeah. So we've pretty much talked about the pros and cons of the fixed cap. So we're kind of on to the recommendations in depth of first the fixed cap. By the way, one of the things up here, Patrick was going to look at some other cities, and I think you looked at a couple, Patrick. If you just want to add what you found in there, just let us know.
Actually, I looked at probably like 80% of the cities from Astoria down to Garibaldi.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, there are a lot of different ways in which people are doing it, from a citywide cap level and just kind of the density cap ideas. There's a growing trend toward identifying citywide caps or ensuring that things have some controls. Even in our own Tillamook County's established 21 cities or areas, including unincorporated Manzanita, where they've said we're going to begin searching for good capping within those areas. There was just a vote in Clatsop County, which lost by, I think, 136 votes or 192 votes. It was almost 50-50 about basically getting rid of short-term rentals in unincorporated areas entirely. So, so people are working toward finding ways. People are moving away from giving free rein and finding ways to find balance and controls, I'd say.
Okay. And I think you said Cannon Beach had a hard cap.
Yeah, Cannon Beach has about, what are they doing? They're considering a cap of around at the current level of about 200.
Okay, but
Um,
a hard cap, not a percentage.
right. They have, I mean, basically they're highly conservative because they have things like, I want to say they have a 14-day rental period within each. They have a lot of different extra controls that basically reduce your ability to rent. And some towns up north only allow, like Astoria, only allows owner occupied short-term rentals. So you have to be on site in most of the neighborhoods and things like that. So, to be fair, it's not an apples to oranges comparison. I mean, there aren't a lot of towns that are exactly like Manzanita. We're either the biggest small town on the coast or the smallest big town on the coast. And the big towns and the small towns do it a little differently. So we are kind of in this interesting, unique spot.
And I think the budget backup, I don't know, Chris, are you back on? Are you still elsewhere? Okay, must be elsewhere. So we'll come back to that. So moving on to the fixed, the in-depth.
Joe,
Yeah,
just real quick before we move in there, and I know, Patrick, I hear what you're saying with not trying to wordsmith the things, but I think some of this may matter and be material. But when we say like reasonable, stable number, I just want to make sure we're not loading up some of these words here, because whether it's a cap or a percentage, I guess where I'm going with this is, instead of saying reasonably stable number for budget planning, it would be an upper boundary to STR based revenue. Like, if I don't know if other folks here agree with that. I'm trying to, rather than say, because it can go down, but by picking a cap, it sets the upper boundary of that.
mhm.
We can definitely work on.
Yeah.
I think we're all in agreement that we can find the best wording possible for these general ideas. The wording isn't perfect, and we can get better. I'm not sure that this short meeting is the best place to work out the wording on each sentence, though.
Yeah, well, I just didn't want to give a perception that the cap does something it's a little thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I'm not going to.
Michael, when you see something that, I think you're absolutely right. So when you see something that is not fitting in with that conception, say something.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets to the same thing as when I was in HR, I would get managers who would say, Jimmy is often late. What's often? Well, many times. Well, what's many times? Is it, once a month? Is it 3 times a week? Is it, when we say things, I think we need to quantify them and then back up the quantification.
100%.
Yeah. And I think that's
actually,
kind of what you're saying.
And real quick, just to that point, just to provide some perspective, because this was in the comments from Anupam and Michael to the doc and those ideas. Just to give a perspective on where we are on a percentage-based cap. There's a lot of talk about, hey, keeping it percentage-based keeps us flexible. It's really important to think about, where does the city place us on this current methodology of percentage based. Whether or not we cap it at a particular level, we're not reducing revenue, because if you look at the budget, the current budget, the 2023-2024 budget, they're not, under the current situation, which is percentage based, they're not projecting more income from short-term rentals until 2028, in the fifth year from this year. And in that year, they're only projecting $12,500 more. So it's almost basically equivalent to 2022. So we just have to keep in mind what we're talking about is not significantly different in terms of revenue from what the city is projecting in any method, as long as we're talking about a cap at a current level.
Okay.
Sure, I have a, this is Anupam. May I add something?
Yep.
I think one of the challenges that I'm facing in this, reviewing this, is that it seems like we've quote made a decision and we're trying to justify it in this document. And that's how it comes across. I think we may be better off as a committee to first talk about, forget all the arguments that are in here, but I can come up with arguments on all sides. Fundamentally, what are the key things that we want to talk about? Do we believe in a percentage or fixed? Obviously, part of it is impact on the city longer term in terms of revenues, especially if you read the stuff here, we're going to exponentially grow and things like that. I mean, how will we provide the services? I don't necessarily have a point of view or specifically saying I don't like fixed cap or I don't like percentage cap. I just think I don't know how to distill it down to some basic information and maybe have a conversation in the committee is, I mean, right now, do we feel like what information do we need to make that decision?
Anupam, I agree with you personally. As we do this, I keep going back and forth. Cap, fixed cap, percentage, fixed percentage. We need one or the other, I believe, because there, as Patrick says, with every other town, there seems to be a trend towards at least having some control over the number of STRs. We did a straw poll when we first started, and you weren't, that was when we started this in November, and I believe you weren't there, but the straw poll then was of the 7 voting members, I think, well, there was 6 because you weren't there. I think 4 or 5 said, yeah, fixed cap. I think there has been some movement on that. And we could take another straw poll now, but I think that as we do this, because we want to present our thought processes to the council, not just an absolute, here's what you ought to do and here's why you ought to do it. I think what the council has asked us to do is say, here's what we recommend, but here's what we discussed regarding the other approach. It's your vote and your decision. So I think as we do this, if we give fair weight to both arguments, I think at the end, if we then take a poll and say, okay, now that we've looked at all of the angles and all of the details, which way would you suggest as being the best method? And then tell council, we went through this, we argued all points, and 5 of us feel this way and 2 of us feel that way. But I think we shouldn't take the poll before we've gone through it, because I think we all are learning things as we go, like, oh, I didn't consider that.
Yeah, I think those are very good comments, Joe, and I appreciate them. Thank you for those. Maybe I was reacting a lot to some of the comments in here, the language in here that seems so biased to me.
Yes,
and pushing a point of view that I don't want to, I don't think we should ever have that kind of thing in any document we give to the council. Because that is just not right. So I would rather, if we feel a certain way, let's stick with the facts and the specific reasons, but let's not go far off into and use words or language that is just as an example, I mean, I use the word exponentially.
Mhm.
I don't see in the survey that all our survey members said we don't want it to grow exponentially. Exponentially is just it's a negative word.
Correct.
It can be a negative word. Anyway, I just think I would be fine with a fixed survey for a period of time, fixed number of STRs for a period of time. On the flip side, no, this hasn't been a problem, the percentages so far. So maybe you leave it as a percentage for a while. We're not even hitting our cap because we are setting the fixed number higher than where we are today anyway. And reevaluate it in 3 years because you're going to reevaluate it no matter what in 3 years or something.
Okay, so at this point, again, what I want to do is say one option is a percentage. If it's a percentage, here's why. If it's a cap, here's why. And once we have that done in language that you say, as you say, is not inflammatory or unnecessarily adjective laden, then let's go back and say, here's the way I would lean. So just starting with this is if it's a cap, and I think this is this one here is if it's a hard cap as opposed to percentage. But let's go through the document and let's take out those words. Let's add words to the percentage because we're weak on that one, and then see where we are.
Okay.
And I think that when we look at this livability paragraph here, your comment is in red, and you're correct. It's that's a good question. Is the problem, if there is a problem, is it that the town's getting bigger, or is it that STRs are getting bigger? And I think that's it differs for different people. Some people would like us to be a 200-person town, again and still. Other people realize that we're just going to get bigger, and if we get bigger, is the problem the number of STRs? Is the problem the problem STRs, and it's not a problem of the number of STRs at all? I mean, I think that argument could be made also. But is there a way to, taking this paragraph?
I agree. And I think part of the challenge in my mind has always been is I don't think the number of STRs, if we just, let's say, cap this, that doesn't mean we wash our hands and say, we're problem solved, we're a happy place now. That's not going to, I guess, we're not going to find a survey next time of saying, no problem with STRs. We got to deal with the problem itself first and make the existence of STRs neutral to us. It doesn't matter whether we have 100 STRs or 400 STRs. If we have it, let's say, managed properly and contained and administered and everything else, what's the issue? So I guess part of my reaction also is, I'm saying I'm not sure I want to deal. This is not how I would deal with the STR issue, so to speak, the livability issue, is by just limiting the number and saying, that's good, we're done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope the whole committee just heard that really loud and clear. This is one facet of our job. The other facets of our job are the other issues, like problem houses, like what Max is doing, like looking at density. This is just one facet.
Right.
We're just starting with this facet. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it's not the be all and the end all.
Okay.
So Joe, if I can try to make it quick, because I agree with a lot of what Anna Palmer is saying. And even though I have my particular view on what is an appropriate policy, and tool to regulate the number of STRs, if we lean towards a cap, I want to make sure that it is a defensible, I want it to be data driven, and I'm not trying to be a technocrat, but at the same time, I just don't want us to pick a number because we're vibing with 265 or something that matches the vibe of the community. I would like it to be rooted in something, but and this is where I'm going with this is I think as an exercise we can go through the document and there's a lot of benefit from going through what we have here today, and I think that will help us be more clear and deliberate with the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. But I think for the sake of if nothing else, presenting to the council, but helping maybe us better understand what we're trying to accomplish, is to have something like a table and not a pro and a con, but what are these two policy approaches going to, what is the outcome or impacts to budget, livability, where are the differences and where are they similar? Because a lot of the things I'm reading in this, I'm like, well, you could say that about a percentage-based approach too. So help me make a decision on this. And so I'm thinking, I'll float this and we can talk, more either today or more offline. But if we get through this document here, I wouldn't mind, collaborating with some other folks on the committee to take the content, and I'm not talking about leaving stuff on the cutting room floor or something, but like taking the content and repackaging it into something that is a more approachable versus this is really put in a narrative type of style. Even right so to where, recommendations in depth, number one is the city cap and then exhibit B is the percentage, right? There should be 1 and 2, right? Not a footnote. Percentages and a footnote. It's something that we're considering and should, from a policy analysis standpoint, even if there's some redundancy there, you should be able to see them side by side to help make that decision. So that's all.
I would love to see that kind of table. I think I see it as an addition, not as a instead of. But I think a table saying outcome, income, impact for both. So again, you're right, so that we can compare and that the council can compare, I think would be really helpful. And I just signed you up.
Okay. And I want to add too that this is not, what we're reading here was not easy to put together, especially with all our opinions and thoughts and data points, survey and all this community input. So thank you, Patrick, Cheryl, and Joe, for giving us this. It's always easier, right, to have something to react to than to come up with from something from scratch. So I really appreciate having this as to help spur further discussion on it. So thanks. I didn't want to be dismissive of the work that's been done.
Yeah, and no one feels dismissed or anything. We're excited to be a part of the process. You guys are Michael and Anna Palmer bring up excellent points, and just so you know, all of the things that you're talking about. Hey, we need we need less of this and we need more of that. Every single question and comment that is in this document, we addressed. I addressed in an updated kind of version of this, which we can build on, which we're building on right now in live time, because basically I sent that off to Joe a couple days ago. She said, "Well, let's not deal with that yet. We have it, but just so you know, all the things you guys are talking about are in a kind of an organic, growing draft of basically here's what we've brought up for percentages. Here's what we've brought up for a fixed cap, a numerical cap." Using all the language that people have put in, all the additions we put into this draft, and then adding things like, to your point, Michael, hey, we don't want a random number. Well, we've got facts, way more facts in there now. Like Bay City has basically the equivalent of 5% short-term rentals to housing stock. Cannon Beach has 11%. We're at 16.7 currently. We're adding the facts in there to make it so that it's not arbitrary. We're adding facts about the financial elements and how much short-term rentals add, and actually it's less. I did some analysis of the budget. It's less than the amounts that we've thought about in the past. We do have significant amounts of income from other areas, and this is before kind of the intense revenue diversification scheme. So a lot of the concerns that I'm hearing are things that I think we as a team definitely want to address and have a plan to put this into an updated version of this in the coming days.
Maybe that's a better way to look at this. We're not trying to do a final document here. We're trying to say, when we get to the point of having a document, what else, what are we missing? What's wrong? What do we need to change? What do we need to add?
For instance, like in the version that I was looking at, what was kind of hard about reading through this was pros and cons of each. And the cons of one were oftentimes the pros of the other. So the format that I kind of put it in as a suggestion for future readers is just kind of, here's the pros for one version, here are the pros for the other version. So, and because Anupam brought up a lot of great points. What are all these cons? Well, this is opinion. And I think that was legitimate. So basically those were easy to all take out and focus on fact-based approaches for this is why this is supportable percentage, this is why this is supportable fixed, based on that prior straw poll where we were like, we see a lot of advantages to a fixed rate cap, assuming we do all the things that Anupam's talking about, which is we don't think that this is going to be the sole fix. We realize that this is part of a framework of fixes that we'll all be working together to address different needs.
So I guess just digging right back into the document, I'll go with my next to keep things moving. All good stuff. So I I saw Anupam, I think the red text is Anupam, that over reliance on a single revenue source that is not guaranteed to last forever. I would agree. Can we I mean, what's the basis for that? If we have something to back that up, let's put it in there. If not, it seems a little bit sensational.
Where are you, Michael?
Just before recommendations in depth. It was the last comment I had on that first paragraph. So.
Above?
Yeah.
Where is that?
It says revenue diversification efforts. Here, let me see.
I got it.
Oh, yeah, yep. So that is not guaranteed to last forever, unless somebody has compelling.
Actually, I already took that out on the new version.
Okay, thanks. Well, it'll be an easy edit.
I agree with you.
First win on the board.
Okay. There. Good.
So would it make, I mean, if Patrick has already done a lot of work and removed some of this, would it be easier to go through that document or?
It would. The reason I didn't is that I thought it was unfair to you guys because you presumably had looked at this one, but I'm happy to switch to the updated one.
My document is basically this document. Like it's basically taking all of the information where we said, hey, let's add more detail on this. And hey, let's take this out. So I tried to do all those things and
Are you okay with switch? Is everybody okay with switching?
Well, as long as the text color, because I think it is really helpful to see where people's suggestions were.
Yeah, I just don't have the text color. So maybe it's worth, I mean, why don't we continue? My idea, and you guys can change it if you want, is just to continue to go through this, or this was Joe's idea. And I can keep tracking I can keep adding and subtracting from kind of this updated version of it.
Yeah,
I don't have the tracking that you're looking for, Michael, so I wouldn't it would be really hard to look at. It's all in black font.
It's helpful for me to see it. And if it's all it is a quick statement of I deleted that, then that's fine and we can just move to the next comment. So I think we can keep cruising.
I think when we get to the point of the percentage, we can switch because he's augmented a lot of the percentage arguments.
Okay.
And they're pretty weak in here, so.
And actually, Anna Palma offered an email kind of sharing kind of his thoughts on his strengths for the percentage. So I put those in basically verbatim onto the percentage side just to continue to kind of supplement that. And, you know, we can use as much more support for the percentage as possible.
I think we also have to separate out growth of the city issues versus growth in STR issues. I think sometimes we're just saying it's Manzanita is going to grow, so we have all these problems and lumping STRs with it, which may or may not necessarily be, I guess the growth of the city is much more of what I would call the council issue, or I don't know, you know, like annexation. I saw some document about potential buildable inventory and things like that. And yes, and quite frankly, I'm not sure I followed it and understood it completely. But that may be an extreme view in terms of, not in extreme in the sense like if you built on every possible square inch of Manzanita that you're allowed to build now or in the future.
Michael looked at that and the answer is there is the opportunity for 837 more homes. That includes the urban growth boundary. So if there were 837 more homes, that would be 146 more STRs at the 17.5% rate.
And where would these 837 homes be?
In every vacant lot in town, plus in the urban growth boundary.
Yeah, and I would add the majority of that acreage is in the not urban reserve area, but the urban growth boundary. So it's to be annexed into town. So I mean, it might be a small reminder, but I mean, this is not a light switch. You know, this is something that, I mean, the UGB has said over whenever it was when the housing needs analysis was done, you know, a 20-year horizon of growth. So, and it's okay if the community still says, no, hey, hard number at 300, we just don't want it to go over 300 or 265 or whatever it is. But as it sits right now, there's, and you'll have peaks and then lulls and peaks up, but over that 20-year, if you were to draw a line of growth, you would add, you know, approximately 146, you know, 130. Yeah. I mean, and there's a tilde there, right? There's a, I mean, it was really coarse math. And again, I put the invite out there if anybody who's a little bit more adept at calculating this stuff, but for the sake of a quick and easy policy look or policy context, that's the number that I arrived at. So,
yeah. Okay.
And that number, if we want to include this in here, which I think we should, we would ask the city to vet that for us.
And the question then comes to my mind is if in fact we did have 837 new homes, what would the cost be to the city to manage those 837 additional homes? Is it in zero or is it what? And how will the city pay for it?
Right. Which is an argument for, and remember it's an argument for percentage, not cap.
I agree. And that's why I think so we have to be careful about when we throw out statistics about, look at this, we could have 400 STRs and the sky will fall. At the same time, recognizing that, okay, but we have only 265 at a fixed thing, can the city run itself with 837 more homes? Does it have the financials to do it?
and that's a great point. And we can make a policy recommendation that whether there is a cap, and again, I'm trying not to be one side or the other, but if you go with the cap, that a periodic review of every 3 years must consider, you know, budgetary impacts. That's how you set up that policy without having to do the big forecast now, but you revisit that, and that's the that's the guidance that's out there, or percentage based, where you can set it up to where the percentage based might be dynamic based on budget, if that's what it is, or maybe it's a housing mix index, or maybe it's, you know, based on community survey. I mean, there's a whole lot of different ways that we can set bookends for growth, whether it's a cap or you know, static cap or a more dynamic percentage.
Yeah.
So good point.
Because let's face it, one of the challenges for Manzanita has been, and every city is grappling with it, is they are so dependent on, well, I guess let me put it this way, property taxes doesn't give you enough money. So you're always looking for alternative sources of money. As you know, you've seen cities, actually many more cities in Oregon are now trying to move towards some kind of prepared food tax to try and raise funding. Some cities have local option levies, etc. You know, Manzanita has relied on STRs a lot, and maybe the revenue diversification will show up some additional ways of making money. But I know our hands are somewhat limited unless the residents decide we need more money, and so we're going to tax ourselves in some form, which is a hard thing to do.
And just so you know, in the new version, because of all those questions that are in this document, we've done our best to kind of strengthen those points. What is it about Manzanita that makes it financially viable to even consider something like this? Because all those points are legitimate. And so we went through and we actually did the details, and we like, well, how reliant are we? If you look at the current financial statements and budget for the city, there is, you know, it's actually not as dire as I think we were thinking it was. When you look at the percentages, 33% of the budget it's about 1.5 million came from STR funding. 33%. That was way less than I thought. 25% came from water revenue. 25% came from taxes and fees and the municipal agreements. So we're actually already in better shape prior to revenue diversification. Layla can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a single A minus. Well, I guess I can't really talk about what the city's. I don't think it's public information to give away the city's budget bond rating, but it's an extremely strong budget rating for a municipality in a city. So the whoever did it, Fitch or Moody's, who does that analysis, has a great deal of confidence in this city's ability to deal with things. And we have things that some other cities don't have, like potential timber stand revenue and different things, you know, things that folks in the Midwest, you know, would dream of. So we try our best to talk about the financial elements to deal with all those challenges that we're thinking about that are all legitimate. How do we do this? Are we putting ourselves at risk by doing this? And we're trying to address those in the upcoming version as well.
And maybe it might be helpful, Joe, maybe at the next meeting, if somebody from the budget committee can come and just speak for a little bit and share their thoughts for the future.
I like that.
Because there's lots of moving parts, and the finances of a city are always complicated to understand. And it'd be nice to just have somebody from the budget committee come and speak.
Yeah.
And I think even Layla said in the last city council meeting, you know, even if you cap the number of STRs, the revenue does continue to grow over time. The amount that people charge for these increases, and you know, a cap on the number of STRs is not capping the revenue from those over time. It continues to grow. But you know, assuming the economy
Right.
regionally, I mean, I think we all shift with the economy, but in general terms, just related to a cap of the STR number, that doesn't necessarily cap the revenue.
I want to just stop for a minute and figure out how we're going to get anywhere. Because I think that we all are, some of us are ambivalent, some of us have strong feelings one way or the other. But unless we have something that we can show our work to the council, it's going to be years before we do something about cap or percentage. We need to be able to, and whether it's with the table, with the outcome and the impact, or whether it's with the narrative, or whether it's with both, we need to present both sides of our argument and our discussion. And I think that's what this document is designed to do. It's not designed to be the final product. It's designed to capture our thoughts and our arguments. And we can continue to talk about theories and concepts, but we need to get it in a form to present. And so I guess I'm a little flummoxed on how to do that at this point.
It's the burden of the chairperson. What can I say?
Yeah. So I'm going to say, let's stop with the concepts and let's get to this document. And if you want to change anything, we'll change it. If you want to add something, we'll add it. That's
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And I'll let you know if we've already added it or removed it.
okay. And you can
And-
tell us what you can look at the document you changed and tell us how you
Yep.
changed it as well.
And Joe,
Yes.
if it's real easy for you, are you able to turn on editing for me? I can't edit the document. I was just going to add like a quick comment in brackets. It'd be easier than me talking, I think.
You should be able to, this is in the STR folder in Google Docs. You should be
Yeah.
able to go into it and edit.
I thought so too. But you know, I'll keep working on it while you guys are working through this. I'll see what else I can do.
Okay. Oh, now I've really screwed it up. I've got this in the wrong place. Oh, well. Okay. So the cap recommendation, if we do a cap, and again, we're gonna do both sides, but if we do a cap, the number that we came up with was 265 because that was close to the number that the original cap was set, the freeze was set at in April of whatever it was, 21, 22.
I thought we had fewer than 265 STRs. I thought it was less than that.
I
It's
think
255
it was 255.
according to the website.
255. Okay, so
Yeah, so it was, yeah. And 255 is what it is now. I believe it was 260 actually. When we put the freeze in, the number of STRs was 260.
And I think that 265 number came forward. We went back, Patrick, chime in here if I'm wrong, and looked at the growth per year that STRs were added to it. But I just want to say one thing, that when we talk about STRs, I think there's many ways. There's another way to look at that STR growth, which we had talked about when we were writing this, was the occupancy rate, because I think that's what's increased in the last few years. And when we talk about that number where we got it, we were adding what might appear to some people as fewer homes, because we've seen that occupancies are higher now. And so, and we look historically back, even though there was a number of homes rented, they weren't occupied as that much of the year as they are now. So that rate has grown too.
maybe we should consider the bedrooms quote that we have.
Yeah,
as a-
all,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that
yeah.
you're exactly right, because the number of homes that have come on are larger and bigger, and so this gets trickles down, I think, Anupam, to the
Yeah,
other issue, the noise and the traffic and da da da. There's
right.
more people coming, more people staying longer, because a lot of the homes now, you have to stay a week in certain periods of the year or more, and so it's not just a number out there. It's, we need to consider all those aspects of it.
Yeah.
And that would get to the, this is one aspect. Another aspect I would really like to look at and maybe even present along with this is Tillamook County's limit on number of people in the home. Their new ordinance says if the home is 4 bedrooms or less, you can have 10 people maximum. It's 2 per bedroom plus 2. And if you have an estate home that's 5 bedrooms or more, you can have a maximum of 14. And so even if you have 8 bedrooms, you still can only have 14 people. And if we want to include that, that's down the road, but it could be part of this because I think it gets at that issue. Is I think it's tied pretty tightly. And it's something that the Tillamook County has already done.
So how
And we
much?
have data on that from all the cities along the North Coast about how they've done it, because there's multiple ways that folks are doing it at the county level and at the city level. And just as an aside, if we're trying to get through this, which is about a citywide cap, I think that's more about kind of neighborhood density. And I think that's a better, just conceptually, something for a future conversation.
Yes. Yeah. I was,
So how
yeah.
much data do we have on Manzanita STRs? Do we know how many bedrooms? Is there some table that can be generated
Yes.
that says here's the, and do we know, we have some limits on how many people can stay too, right?
2 per bedroom plus
Or
4. Yeah.
Okay, so if you have a 10 bedroom mega house, you could have 24 people.
You could, but we don't have any.
Okay, what's the largest we have?
I think it's, I want to say 16 or 18. I can't remember which.
there are less than 10, I think, in that large range. And
Anupam,
like
you,
I said, that gets to there are cities that do caps. Like you can only have 14 people, 16 people, whatever. Once again, that's, I think, for a future conversation about density and kind of neighborhood level flows.
Anupam,
But
you go to the,
but the average is 10 persons. 10 The average is about 10, a little over 10 people per house. And by that rule, that pardon me, occupancy is average 10 per house. So you can get an average of 14 people per short-term rental.
Anupam, and that's I think it's important to say it here. That is a maximum number.
Yeah.
Allowed. And so if you go to the city website and you click on short-term rental homes, you'll see the list, and on the right-hand column, it shows maximum allowed people in each home. Most people, I would say, from just talking with short-term rental owners, they don't rent to that maximum. Like I think Michael, your home is 10.
It's either 8 or 10, but I limit it to 6 because I don't
Yeah.
want
But
I want a
but
family house, not a party house.
yeah, so it's going to show on the website as maximum, not actual, but it's still a worthwhile. I mean, it's there. You can look at it.
All
And
right, thank you.
yeah. Okay.
And I would say, just as like an additional like constraint that kind of reels things in, is that I believe that city has Florida area ratios that limit just how much house you can put on a lot. And so when you look at many of the remaining lots, at least in city limits right now, they're 50 by 100, and there's only so much house you can build on that. And so, as we annex things like the Highlands might be a different story. Those are, 7 to 9,000 square foot lots over there. So it's a little bit different story. But just for folks either on our committee or public who are listening in, I mean, there's not going to be like, a mega Airbnb that comes in and has 30 guests or something like that. So.
Okay, moving back. So the paragraph about the numerical cap of 265, anybody have a really strong opinion that that's just the wrong number to suggest? Okay,
Well,
and
well-
anything else?
Well, can we get people's thoughts on that? I'm kind of curious about that.
Okay,
Yeah, I have thoughts. Sorry for taking up all the air in the room. If we do end up going with a fixed cap, my preference would be that it's rooted in something. And I don't want to make this too arduous, but going back to, so what do we have as far as like data in to help us as an advisory group say 265 is the number? There's a couple different ways. You could say, hey, if it ain't, broke, don't fix it. And if thereabouts the number and survey's generally good, then that's the number. And that's, I think, okay. It's kind of lo-fi, but I think that'll get the job done. I was trying to think about this. Patrick and I talk, and I always ruminate on our conversations for like 3 or 4 days after that, trying to think of like, and try to see both sides. But so going by the survey results, because that is data in that we have, we can look at these neighborhoods and say this neighborhood was generally okay with the number of STRs in there. This neighborhood was not. And I think that there is a data-driven approach that we could use to say we need to, limit it here. This area can go up, or how. So if there's 15% of people that still have a non-positive sentiment, or whatever the percentage is an assumption that that's the 15% we address with ordinances on noise, lighting, parking, etc., and that there's capacity for it to go up in those neighborhoods. So I think we could devise a way that's a little bit more grounded in some real findings, especially if we're going to make a policy recommendation to council. We could say, we picked this number because XYZ reasons. And maybe it is something as simple as when the freeze was put in effect, it was 260, and survey results were generally favorable except for these 2 neighborhoods or something like that.
So I think that's what this document is for, right? I mean, our document is going to provide the support for whatever number we come up with. Like, we're going to provide all the information that you're shooting for. And secondarily, for the things you're talking about neighborhood wise, once again, that's going to come up when we get to the neighborhood based density stuff.
Well,
do you have a number? Do you have a number higher, lower, or equal to 265 that you prefer? Or is it too early because you lack the facts?
That's more like it.
Okay.
Good. I guess my only comment is that I don't, that number might be higher, it might be lower. My gut tells me it could be higher. I feel like we have capacity, but I know that's not everybody's perception. But we have a survey that helps us better understand that. And I'd like whatever the number to be, to us to be able to point back to something. Especially the survey was such an effort, and the response was so great, that I'd love to be able to point back to that when we land on a number for a cap or a percentage, for the percentage approach.
okay. I'm just going to go through. Cheryl, any thoughts one way or the other?
Well, I think this has always been the rub all along here, is the density issues that we keep bringing up about, I don't think it's an accurate statement to say we could add 400 homes and they'll all be evenly distributed around the city. And so it will be, everybody gets it. I think the reality is whatever number percentage we get is going to be clustered in certain neighborhoods because they're close to the resource people come to, which is the ocean. I'm not in favor of raising the number higher, because when we look at what was it, Patrick, 837, the total number of homes that could potentially be built?
Yep.
So if you look,
Yep.
if you want to look at what percentage 265 would be of that number, I think that puts us in the ballpark, because I think we did that at our planning meeting, but it was a while ago when we were writing this, of our neighbors. So we can, I mean, I think it's a number we could go with for now, because until we flush out those issues around density and how to manage that, or make suggestions for how the city can manage that, I don't support having a big number there, because I know it's not going to be an even distribution, and we're going to set up streets or neighborhoods that are in effect small hotels when you add how many short-term visitors are within that block at a given time.
And I, Cheryl, I completely agree with you. And I think that's why I feel like these issues are so intertwined. And even the 265, if we say, what's to say that over time, all those 265 end up on the beach? And that's a hypothetical, that unless you address the other piece of it.
Yeah.
Whether you do
By the way, I
percentage,
looked at that this morning, and it's a very rough count, and it's not, I won't vouch for the accuracy, but just to give you a rough number, I looked at the North Beach area, that's north of Lanita and west of 3rd Street. And I counted 252 homes and 67 from the survey short-term rentals, and that gives 26.6%. So yes, that is something that we don't want to, I don't think we can solve density. We can't solve all problems, but perhaps when we look at the percent calculation, one of the pros could be that we could say we want it 17.5% citywide, but we want to limit the beach area to 25% or 30% or whatever we decide it should be. And that by doing the percent, it gives us the opportunity to solve that problem that you're talking about, Cheryl. But
Well, and the other part of that problem is, and I don't know how to solve this, is whatever number or percentage we deal with, we have to look at the impact of the unincorporated or areas around us, like Neocon area. We don't regulate how many STRs are there, and there are a lot there. Or we look at the pockets down by Pelican and Windward on the other side of Neocarny. That's and then there's another pocket up, I don't know what you call the neighborhood.
Water
what do you
tower.
call it? Water tower up there. So I think consideration, and maybe it's somehow woven into this, whatever percentage or number we land on, we're thinking about those areas around us, which will impact the issues of livability in our community. Because I would bet most visitors that rent in Neocon or on the east side of Neocarny, they don't have a clue they're not in the city of Manzanita.
That's correct.
Right?
But
So
we can't do anything about them either.
I understand that, but I think we need to consider that impact as we move forward when we come up with our cap and number.
When
That's a good
we
point.
get to percentages, keep that in mind, though, that perhaps we can put that in as an add and a solution to that problem.
so
I want to keep going down the, how do you feel about the 265? Carol?
Okay, well, my thought is that the factors that affect the percentage or the number, we still haven't dealt with. So again, I made the comment last time that I think we're working on our final document to present to council, and we still haven't fixed the density problems. I personally would like to see the density maxed out within every neighborhood so that no neighborhood is able to have 26.6% of their homes be rentals, short-term rentals. I think there's a big difference between a longer-term rental versus a short-term rental. So I'm concerned we're, again, working on our final document, and we haven't dealt with any of the other issues that have been bothering people for a long time. So I'm fine with it being limited, but I think it needs to be limited citywide. My preference is a citywide cap with even percentages throughout the area.
So yours is, you're going to present, but if we do a cap, because again, we want to present both options. If we do a cap, you're feeling about the 265.
Well, if they're all along the beach or along the Laneda corridor, it basically destroys the livability for those areas because it's too high. The percent of 26.6% is too high for somebody that is actually living in the community. Because all they have is people coming and going.
Carol, can I say something on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Carol and I talked a little bit about this, and so I think just one thing to point out, like in the new version, almost the first paragraph that was added was, to your point, this isn't a final document. The final fix is not a single fix that is only a citywide cap. This is the first step, or the first portion of a quilt of ideas that are going to work together. So just at this point, I mean, I think it's become very, very clear. This isn't a binary choice. It's not about citywide caps versus kind of neighborhood caps. These are going to be part of a plan that we all put together. They're going to work together, and this is the first step, and not a final plan. This is the first step, and the second step is going to be going to the neighborhood levels, and together, we knock this one out first. We get to the second one, which is going to be pretty complicated because there's a lot of different ways that can be done, and we're going to do them both. So just with this first step, just to take it and kind of break it down, if we were to focus on this one step, we know we're going to deal with diversity, density. We know we're going to work at the neighborhood level, assuming that we are all on the same page, that we're definitely going to do that because that's a priority to everybody. Then is 265, if we had a cap and it was a hard cap, is 265 like something that's too high, too low, or just right for you, Carol, assuming we all work on those things that are even higher priorities to you and Anupam and stuff?
I think it's a good starting point. I think they need to be limited, and I certainly don't want to see there be more STRs. And I agree with the statement that Neoconi, I've seen houses in Neoconi advertised as Manzanita homes. And yeah, so I don't know. Well, I'm for limiting it and distributing them fairly throughout the city.
Yeah, I am too. And I will say that I look forward to talking about how to distribute them throughout the city. And I would say, to your question, Joe, and kind of to that sentiment that I heard from Cheryl and Carol a little bit, is, I mean, I'm willing to compromise at 265. I think there are people like Michael, Anupam are kind of thinking about, hey, if we had to do it this way, that number seems small to me. To me, I would be totally comfortable at more of a 250 level, 255 where we are right now. But as a compromise, I mean, I understand that I could see, it sounds like 265 is in the middle. I mean, personally, we've done now the research on the financial side, the viability side. We can show that 250 is a reasonable place that takes care of us for the next 5 to 10 years. But that's just me being on the outlier. I understand that I'm part. I understand that I'm part of a team, and I would work toward kind of that consensus range.
Well, I think you brought up an important point that maybe we didn't share with everybody on the committee, is that when Joe and you and I were writing this, we were all at 250 for a long time, and we kind of talked amongst ourselves and got it up to 265, thinking that allowed for some growth. But I would be very happy with 250 too. I mean, I just feel like I guess my point was when we were talking about raising it above 265, that's beyond what I felt comfort with based on the information we had and the numbers we looked at when we were writing this. So in fact, I think the first draft of what I sent, I said between 245 and 265 because I felt that 250 was a comfortable number. So I support your opinion, Patrick. Yes.
Yeah, can I ask a factual, just a fact? And I'm embarrassed to ask this question because I should know the answer. So the cap that we talk about, the percentage cap that we have today,
Yes.
talk about the city, does it include the unincorporated areas and the urban growth boundaries or not?
No.
So
No,
it's only for the city of Manzanita.
Correct. That's
And
all that the
and
city
do we
has
have-
control over.
And do we have
Mhm,
two
that's
hundred
right.
and 55 today in the city of Manzanita, excluding all those areas?
Correct.
And do we know how many we have in all the other areas, like urban growth boundaries and?
We
we only know urban growth boundaries. We don't know, Neoconi, but there's about 38-ish. If you add them together to what we have today, we get up to 19.3%.
And
But
are you
actually,
including the
percentages are hard
unincorporated
to say
Tillamook
because we
County?
don't know the housing stock. But the reality is this gets back to Cheryl's point about earlier, and I think this is an important point. Is when we do this, I think we'll also have the next step is we'll have a plan for how to incorporate if an unincorporated area with STRs comes in, we will have a plan about how to bring those in at a reasonable
Yeah.
level, not an out of control level.
So just to,
Right.
excuse me, bear with me for just a second so I know. So today the cap exists only for the city of Manzanita boundary.
correct.
And so there's no restriction on the urban growth boundary areas that are, a lot of them along the beach side, right? I mean, they go towards the state park. Is that-
Yes, but they are regulated by the county.
Right.
And the county has just put in a new ordinance. And in that ordinance, they are suggesting that an area will not grow more than 1 or 2% above what they already are. And they haven't finalized that part of it. But for instance, Neoconi, and again, my numbers are going to be a little off, but I believe Neoconi is currently at about 21%. And so what they're saying is if it's currently at 21, we're not going to let it get to 30. We're not going to let it get to 25. We're going to put a limit on that growth. Okay, but they haven't done it yet, but there is some control of that area by the county, not by the city. The city has no control.
Right, but I think it's also fair to assume, Anupam, that on those, there's I think 3 or 4 blocks on the way past the golf course on the east side, where probably I know on a couple of those streets, there's at least 25 to 30% of the houses on that street are already short-term rentals. That's down by where I live, and Carol and lives, I think, down there too. And so that's what I'm talking about. You have the urban growth boundary, but then you have this unincorporated Tillamook County kind of these little areas, that swaths of blocks that just kind of salt and pepper their way around us. And those up, like Joe said, they are talking about regulating, but they have not been regulated. And even if they do freeze them, or at this point limit growth to 1% a year, they're still over
1% period. 1%.
Period. Okay. Well, they're still there. That was my point in
Mhm.
bringing them up.
Mhm.
So
Also,
Cheryl,
keep
just
in
to
mind, the
clarify,
survey said that the people in the beach areas have less of an issue with livability than the people in the non-beach areas. So that might just be because they didn't answer the questions, or it might be an actual fact. So I think we need to be careful of saying, it seems to us, this, however many people are on this call, that it's more of a problem because there's more SCRs, because the survey didn't show that.
I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm saying that we need to factor those numbers in, because I think a lot of more this is my experience on our blocks, is they are second homes on the beach. So maybe they are
Right.
owner occupied infrequently, or they are short-term rentals. But when we're looking at that swath of how much the density there, you have people that we have more density there than maybe what it just looks like straight on the map or the city limits, because across
Mhm.
the street, add in, 8 to 12 more
I see.
houses
I
per
see what you're
block.
saying.
That's what I'm talking about.
I see.
So can I say a couple of things? So one of the things, like going back to what Cheryl and Carol both said about density, and I know we're trying to like maybe phase our approach on these issues, but I think whether it's a cap or a percentage, density is lockstep with that, whatever the solution or strategy is. And I think that's a very simple policy that we can advise on, to say, cap must implement density policy. It's and that we will get there, and I think, but two, I just want to, like, we're talking about the cap, and it's a good exercise to kind of work through, okay, or the actual quantity, and it's a good exercise to like work through, but it's really muddying the waters from deciding on what policy tool we're going to use here, whether it's a numerical hard cap or a percentage base. And I think for the sake of today, we can keep working through this, but like post meeting, I want to look at these two policies, and then we can get into the cap and then the number and what that is. But right now it's like it's coloring a policy tool discussion with the outcomes, and it's like, which one's the better tool and why, right? And then the last thing that I just want to say too is, like, so if we do like a lo-fi version of a cap and say, look out my window now, look at the survey and say, generally people are okay, let's not change that. Thinking ahead on how the city will annex property in, it will be all those lands, not necessarily maybe in the economy, but like south and east, it will be those lands, but there's a bunch of STRs in them right now. And so when we think about, I don't want it to grow to this big number, the number's already there. And I don't know if it was Cheryl that said there's 30 or something like that, just in that little area. We're really more, if it's 255 right now, we're really at 285 and experiencing the impact of 285 right now. And maybe that's just, that's just off the cuff. There might be like more like 45 or 50 if you look at, some of those other areas that may come in over time as part of that acreage. And so if we are going to do like that approach of, well, what is it now? Let's just not grow anymore. Then I just want us to recognize that the number is actually larger. And as we expand, whether it's percentage or cap, I guess we want to be able to consider those existing STRs that are already out there. And for better or worse, we're experiencing those impacts too.
Thanks, Michael. I think
agree
that's
with
a good point.
Yeah.
I want to keep
I
going.
actually have some verbiage on how to phase that in. So I can add that to the next draft.
I guess in keeping with what Michael said, and I agree with him, all of this conversation sort of makes me feel like, wait a second, we have 255, we're not at the cap, we haven't hit it right now, we're growing 2.4% a year, 2.4 homes a year. One approach that we could take is that this committee takes is that we retain the percentage cap for 3 years. We're going to take this time to figure out the density, figure out other administrative issues, figure out pricing, whatever it might be, and including whatever the city might do with urban growth, annexation, anything else, and revenues, and then revisit the cap versus the percentage number, because even if you, as an example, the 265 is about 4 years of growth on historical growth in STRs. So maybe it's 3 years that we say we're going to cap it or we're going to hold it. So even if we leave it as a percentage number today, it's not going to grow that dramatically or differently than it has in the past. maybe plus or minus a little bit. But it gives us time to figure out some of these other issues that we're dealing with, that we want to deal with.
Anupam, that was the point of the freeze. The point of the freeze was, let's freeze it for 3 years and let's look at it. And so we're a year and a half in. And so that's exactly what we should be doing right now. And maybe we consider some of these other things too, but that's what we need to do now, is consider all these different issues.
Yes, and I
I
think
want to get to Phil and to Linda and whoever else hasn't had a chance to speak. So Phil, do you have thoughts?
With regards to the cap of 265,
Or just yeah.
no, not really. I'm wondering why a percentage can't be used as a backup for justifying whatever the ultimate cap is.
Elaborate.
Well, if we're going outside our community to justify that we are in tune with the rest of the Oregon coast, and if they're operating off of a percentage, how are we going to justify our situation at 265 or whatever it is back into a percentage? So I'm saying if you have a percentage that you establish, be it 17 or whatever, and you use it as a backup tool for justifying a cap of 265, why can't you rely kinda on both to solidify your position with regard to your recommendation?
That makes sense.
Can
I'll
I
add that to the draft.
can I offer? I don't know whether we beat this to death, but I've got a couple other things that I'm concerned about under the recommendations, and I don't know whether you're ready to move on or not.
I am, and let me come back to you next, right after Linda.
Fine.
Well, the 265 seems adequate for now. I really like Anupam's suggestion that it be set for a period of time while we're doing the other work that needs to be done, and then come back and revisit it again. I think the city also needs the option to look at where we are financially and be able to have the ability to change that number if necessary. So those would be my two comments.
What do you think about having a budget committee member help us with that?
I would rather personally see Layla.
Okay.
I was just in a revenue diversification meeting, and the person that really understands where we are right now is Layla, and what we're projecting and looking for in the future. And in fact, I just texted her to see if she'd be willing to do that.
Okay.
She'd bring the kind of information this committee needs.
Great. Okay. Okay, Phil, back to you.
Okay, I'm going to move to the recommendations page. I may be jumping over.
I think at that point, that's okay.
Okay. So we've pretty much talked about a fixed citywide cap instead of a growing percentage, vice versa. Item number 2, the simplified citywide cap will include all zones, including C1 and R4. Yes, for sure. And the STR waiting list will prioritize applicants from the Lanita corridor. I'm a little concerned about this, and for the following reasons. If I were a person who came down and purchased a residence in Manzanita with the idea of applying for an STR application, and I knew that there was going to be a preference established for the Lanita corridor, there's a possibility I would never see my application come to the light of day. So I think you're going to get some pushback with regards to those folks. I'm also concerned about the livability of the area. If you set up a situation where both business and STRs are trying to exist, then that property is going to become highly desirable. And in the process, you may set up a bidding war with regards to the availability of that property and the price that people are going to have to pay in order to get into that area.
Um,
And number 3 is the fact that if we go ahead and we establish a priority for the Lanita corridor for growth, if parking becomes an issue and traffic becomes an issue, it's going to migrate from that area to adjoining neighborhoods. And I think you're going to get pushback from those adjoining neighborhoods. And specifically, I'm thinking about the people on Dorcas.
Phil, can I ask you a question?
By the way,
Sure.
excellent points, Phil. Thank you.
Mhm.
So historically, the idea has been one way to move short-term rentals out of neighborhoods is to encourage it in the business corridor. So what I'm hearing you say is maybe that's run its course because there are positives and negatives to trying to encourage that kind of transition.
What I'm saying is, rather than make a recommendation, why don't you just let it to grow as it is right now, without emphasizing the increase in that particular area. Until such time as you can establish that a real need for moving density from one area to another. Just looking at it from an overall parking standpoint and traffic standpoint, we're going to get a heavy concentration of cars within a very small area that is already inundated with traffic to begin with.
Phil, let me ask, and I think we need a better number, but Patrick did just a walkabout a couple months ago. And I think, Patrick, what you found was there's not much opportunity. There aren't that many homes in the Lanita corridor.
Yeah, but Phil's point is well taken. I mean, what he's saying is, based on supply and demand, if you have two different groups competing for each parcel, you're potentially increasing the demand for that and potentially increasing the price.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll be honest. The only reason that point is in there is because we're trying to honor the fact that historically there's been this idea. It's an uncapped area. There can be as many STRs as we want in there, and that was historically the idea, is try to move them in here. But to Phil's point, which I support, if we've reached a point where that is no longer tenable, that totally makes sense. Phil says, hey, let's incorporate this as a whole citywide cap, including C1 and R4. I'm totally good with that. And reducing taking away a prioritized wait list is fine with me too.
Mhm.
Is there anyone
we're
who
smart.
feels that there should be a prioritized wait list? Just speak, because I can't see your hands.
I
No,
think
I don't.
Go ahead, Carol.
I
Oh,
think it goes
well,
back. Oh,
Sure.
did you say Carol or Cheryl?
Well, I heard Carol first, and then I saw
Oh,
Cheryl
okay.
talking. So.
If you want it
Okay, let
out,
me go
if
first.
you want it out, fine. If you
I have
don't
a
want it
couple,
out, yeah.
I have a couple of comments. One is that if we fill up the Lanita corridor with SDRs and prioritize them, I agree with the thing that it'll make the property and the things very expensive, but also it really limits the opportunity for businesses to come in. And one of the things that we are going to need as there are more population coming in is are more restaurants that are open, are a few more of the small businesses that people are asking for to improve the livability.
Although I would say, having owned an STR, you're gonna make a lot more money being a restaurant than you are being an STR. It's real, I mean,
Okay.
seriously, it is not a
That's
cash
true.
cow. Cheryl?
I think that was in there, as Patrick said, because historically the city had no caps on that area, so we assumed it was a priority. I mean, we figured that's what was the mission was. I also think it was probably that a statement that came from our conversations about the issues of density in neighborhoods, about moving the STRs into that what's already a semi-commercial zone as it is. And I think on Lanita itself, and Joe and Patrick, I could be wrong, but aren't there only 5 or 3 properties that we're talking about right on Lanita? The rest is back in the
One-off.
one-off, yeah. The rest is back in there. And so it's not really, it sounds like we're prioritizing it, but there isn't that much to prioritize there. We could investigate it further or take it out completely, but I think that's where we were following a lead that had been established by creating, that area is currently not in, there's no caps in that area.
Right.
Let's get a count of current and potential and where they are and come back and revisit this, because we might end up taking it out, or we might end up saying it's kind of a moot point.
Is it too early to just make a motion to remove the prioritized list and say that if we do any hard cap or percentage cap that we include the Lanita corridor inside that? I mean, could we've talked about this for a year and a half. Like, is it, I bet we're pretty close on agreement on this.
May I
But
ask,
if we're not, we can table it.
can somebody define for me what Lanita corridor means?
I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
So the C1 area basically goes from Lanita, basically from the beach up to 101. I mean, that's roughly what it is, and that's kind of been always designated as the place where businesses can be set up. They can't be set up in residential areas. There's basically the road on either side of it. I believe that's Dorcas and Manzanita, is R4, where you can have, higher density buildings. You can have like multifamily, like maybe duplex, triplex, stuff like that. So in basically that stretch of those 3 roads, which is C1 and R4.
It's only one half. It's only one half of those roads. It's only on Manzanita, it's the south side, and on Dorcas, it's the north side.
Anyway, for at
Laurel.
least 20 years, we've never capped that. We've never had any STR cap on that area whatsoever.
Well,
And
part
just
of
so,
the reason for that is that makes it walkable so that you can walk downtown. And that's part of the kind of the view. I mean, it was never capped because we wanted to have more concentration in the core area.
Right. And so there is a desire by some people to, again, have that be a more heavily lived in.
Right.
And as Michael has said many, many times, he likes the activity. That's why he's bought his house inside the Lanita corridor.
Yeah, I've said it before, hopefully not too redundant here, but yeah, you expect in a city the commercial and high density residential areas to be more vibrant. And it is kind of like if if we don't want short-term rentals up the hill, then where are they going to go? And I mean, maybe the answer is they don't. We limit them to where they just go away. But here is like, well, this is an area of town that you would expect them to be, and that was the thought, is maybe encourage them to go to. I think all the points that Phil brings up are good ones. But there's policy responses to that. You could limit, everything would have to be mixed use or commercial. You want to have a single family residential home being built in there. I mean, you could update what you allow in there. You can, in lieu of prioritizing it, you could, address it with higher density. If it's 10% up the hill, 17% elsewhere, and with 22% or 25% on the corridor, then that's a strategy to allow more to go in there without necessarily prioritizing it. The other thing, and this is starting to get kind of out there, and I don't know how you enforce it, but I think there's a way that you can have car-free short-term rentals in town. You can restrict them to say no cars, just no cars available, no, or limit the on-street, remove the minimum parking requirements, and then there's no on-street parking and or no off-street parking, and I guess maybe they're on-street or something like that. But it discourages. Families want off-street parking. It's a different type of renter when they're smaller, or you limit floors. There's a lot of different policy approaches that you can have to shape what type of short-term rentals and how many are on Lanita. But I think where I'd like the committee to land on is, is high density residential and commercial a space that we would expect short-term rentals to be there? And if so, is it a place that we would encourage them to be there?
I would also argue, Michael and Phil, I hope you know the answer to this. If there is a residential unit in town, I don't care where it is, but even in C1 and R4, if it is residential, it has to have off-street parking. That's just, is that correct or no?
That is correct.
Okay.
So just to bring us back for a second. So for sure, we can this is a separate issue about how many short-term rentals can be in the Lanita corridor, and we will deal with that when we talk about the density of each neighborhood. So we'll definitely do that. But getting back to the original point, I think we're just trying to acknowledge that when we bring in the Lanita corridor into any citywide cap, it's going to be okay to bring them in and just add up all houses all total rather than exclude this one area. And two, we don't need a prioritized waiting list. We can use the existing process for the waiting list. I think it sounds like there's some consensus to that. Is there anybody who disagrees with that?
I'm happy with that. So long as we don't prioritize it.
Good.
Just let it
Okay.
grow
Yeah, I'm good with that.
And I would add that if we are removing the word prioritize, which I think is complicated and maybe contentious, but I would have maybe in the notes that we need to develop some broad policy language that encourages short-term rentals in R4 and C1. We don't have to say
which we can do by occupancy levels. Like, so as an example, Seaside in their tourist area, which is by the beach or whatever, and by the promenade, they have 100% occupancy level. You can put as many in there as you want, whereas neighborhoods have lower percentages. So in terms of that point, that will be taken care of, I think, when we get to the occupancy, or when we get to occupancy and density discussions.
And I'm not talking about deciding what the mechanism is, but I think we need, that's our role as a policy advisory committee, is to advise on policy, and it could be high level and say, yes, we want to encourage it, or no, we don't. But I think we need to have some direction here, so when we go to implement it, that we understand what we're trying to implement.
So are there other policy things, Phil, maybe in the planning commission, other places that can influence what happens in the Lanita corridor?
That could be, especially if the city develops a policy where they want to encourage walk-free, car-free zones. That's an issue that we haven't talked about. I will tell you that one of my reasons for bringing this up was the fact that when we looked at the Lofts project that went in on the corner of Dorcas and the Extension Classic, also known as Ted Erickson Drive, I was not aware, and I don't know how many of my other city planning commission members were aware that there was a project for an upgrade to the street of Dorcas, which made a big difference when that was known. I mean, we knew that there was going to be an improvement made, and if anybody who's driven down Dorcas recently, it is definitely improved. One thing I would like to find out before we establish a hard policy for the Lanita corridor is, one, does the city have any plans for residential street upgrade within those areas? And two, I know that the city, and in particular, the city manager is talking about a discussion with regards to parking and some potential remedies for that. So that was one reason why I brought this up. I would just like us to take a pause until those issues can be explored a little bit by either this committee or others, and give us some breathing room and some time before we come up with a hard policy as to what needs to go on within the Lanita corridor.
Okay. I think that's good. Good points. We're coming up on 20 minutes left in the meeting. I'm going to take this down for a minute so I can see people. Who in this group has a strong bias towards percent instead of a cap?
I do.
Michael?
Ah, yes.
I don't need a straw poll. What I'm looking for is, Michael and Anupam, would you work offline with me to take what Patrick's already done in his second draft, but to put together the percentage proposal for our next meeting, and we can look at that and only that at the next meeting?
I would be happy to do that, Joe, but I guess my issue is a little different, slightly different. I think there's so many other pieces of this puzzle that have to be dealt with. So my view is keep the percentage cap where we are for 3 years, but let's prioritize the things, all the things we need to work on, including density, anything else, and then we'll reassess in 3 years.
We can put that in the proposal.
Okay.
We just need to have it as a proposal.
Gotcha.
So here is the proposal. We're going to do this and this and this and this.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Okay. And Michael, you willing to work with that? And we can try to put it in your outcome impact format, which might be really helpful to look at.
Yeah, I would love to do that. And I would love to take this content and put it in a format that is need, objective, and policy. Because what I heard Phil say too is, when we talk about the need, and he's relating it to roadway improvements, but I mean, I was stumbling around this. What are we going to, I feel like the group is, what are we going to do with Lanita? And like, I want to take a step back and say, well, what is the need there? Is the need to inject vibrancy and people on there? Or is the need to bring in more, maybe we limit STRs and then require mixed use development. So you have to do long-term rentals up there. I mean, there's a whole lot else going on here that should inform what type of policy we recommend. And it just feels a little bit piecemeal at this point. And I want to put it back into a very clear arc where we identify what the need is. We have an objective that we want to do, and then we can write, we can write policy that speaks to that. So
I'll work with both of you offline to get a time and have something for the next meeting that we can look at. Next thing on the agenda is any other issues that anybody in the group would like to see addressed sooner than later. And let me just add, Carol, you asked that we had a report by Max, and Leila has asked that we wait until he's working on a spreadsheet and a log, and that is not, he's still working on it, so we want to wait. Leila asked that we wait for that before we get a Max report. So, but anything else that anybody on the committee feels is important to talk about with our remaining time as an issue that has come up?
Did we talk about the cap reevaluation period?
We have not, because I think that's yeah,
Could we?
yeah, sure.
My opinion is that 12 years is a little long,
Oh, God, yes.
and
We've already established that.
okay, all right. So there are some things that I'm concerned about, which is why I brought up 2 years is probably too short. 3 years may still be too short. But there are some things that I'm concerned about that may come up that would influence us with regards to looking at STRs, and they would be outside our community. For example, if we had something that came from the state with regards to ADUs, or if we had something in Tillamook County that came up that would influence part of the areas that we might consider annexing in the future. I just think that 12 years is out too long. If in fact you're set on 12 years, then I would put in some provisos where you can call a special session to address some of these outside issues that we don't foresee right now, that can be on our doorstep in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think the 12 years was a dream.
Is 3 to 5 a more reasonable range to consider to
minute.
start with?
Yeah,
Wait a minute.
so long as you put in a proviso where you can go back and address the STR as an outside need or influence may cause you to do so.
For sure.
I'm afraid of getting into well, we can't do this because we've got a 5-year time frame on this.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, another thing you need to factor in is the fact that you may change administrations in City Hall, and they may have a different viewpoint.
Right.
So that's something else that you want to consider. So there are a number of outside influences that would cause me to be a little bit wishy-washy on a hard set number of 5, 7, whatever.
Cheryl?
Well, I was just going back to, I don't think 12 years was a fairy tale number. We used how long the percentage cap had been in the current percentage cap up until the freeze had been in place. And we also were looking at considering that in order for us to collect data to see how this is working or look at the course of development, this you need some time for it to shake out. And while we recognize the change in leadership, you want something that's stable enough so it can go. So this is not a constant thing for the city to be dealing with. So I think that's where we did, throw out 12 years, because what's the 17% has been in effect, 20 years, 30 years,
Yeah,
30
25,
something.
something along.
So
along
it
that.
was kind of half of that. So back to what Patrick said, I would not put 3 to 5 years. I would maybe a further discussion is to push those numbers up a bit, but incorporate Phil's idea that allows the council to call special sessions based on new information and criteria that's come in. But I don't think going through all this work, by the time we spend 3 years doing it, saying now we're going to look at it again in 2 years or 3 years, I'm not sure that's effective use of working smart, so to speak. I think it needs to be pushed out a little bit, but Phil had great ideas about consent. about.
I can live with any number so long as you allow yourself the opportunity to go back and reassess data.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. But keep in mind,
maybe we call it a minimum. We call it a minimum review period. So I mean, in other words, you know, at this period of time, we should definitely touch it if we haven't already. But you always have the opportunity when a material issue or concern or material change comes up. I mean, that no one on this committee is trying to tie the hands of our leadership.
No. This should be a tool, in my opinion, this should be a tool that the council can use as they make the decisions for growth and development, and also to comply or to get in step with ordinances or whatever's that might come, mandates from the state or the council. But 3 years is just very short. So I would push it beyond, 5 to 8 years, except with the exceptions that Bill
Yeah, I
said.
think that can be reworded. I agree. Michael?
So yeah, I think well, maybe, I wonder if the sentiment about pushing it out longer is because it's been such a big lift this go around. I think I would really hope that the next time that we have a touch point on this topic, that we have I was very happy with how the survey was structured. So I don't think that'll be, I think to get new public sentiment won't be a hardship for the city. But I also want to say, to Cheryl's point about tying it into, local government action, and this is more a question maybe for Phil and Linda, but and Layla, but tying it into periodic review of the comp plan to make sure that those decisions are kind of lockstep with the land use. If you're doing any changes to your comp plan or plan map or anything that's happening like that, or just a check-in, that's typically every 2 to 3 years. So it makes sense to tie it in with something like that. I understand that gobbles up a lot of staff and other resources when you're in the middle of a comp plan amendment or update. So maybe you want to time it, just before or right after or what have you, but it make a lot of sense to sync it up with something that was routinely cyclical like that. Budget cycles, and it doesn't have to be a big deep dive, but it could be a quick sensitivity test or a quick sniff test on, whatever we're doing with a survey or something.
Nothing's quick.
Yeah. Well.
Let's I think rewrite that with Phil's comments in mind.
Absolutely.
And everybody else's. Yeah. Okay. Other things, anybody from the public who have hung in there with us? I would like to add one more thing. It's Anupam's birthday tomorrow.
Oh,
Woo!
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Anupam.
Thank you. I do have one request for next time, or maybe even circulate between meetings. And again, this just speaks to and nothing to do with my birthday, by the way. I'd love to see, for me, I'd like to be a little bit more educated on some of these things. As an example, my question of what is Lanita Corridor? So when we say something like that, I know what it is. I know, Michael, you had some wonderful maps at one time. Maybe you can send those out or circulate them again, at least a reminder to me what that means. Because all these zones, C1, R2, I'm not sure. I want to make sure that at least I understand what you're referring to. Again,
Anupam, it's on the city website. Go to the city website and click on zoning and it'll show you the maps.
On Zoom, click on what?
On the City of Manzanita website.
Uh-huh.
If you go to the City of Manzanita website and click on zoning up at the top, it'll show you the map.
And will it also tell me what the Lanita Corridor is in that?
Yeah, I mean, it shows you.
It's just look for C1 and R4.
Yeah.
It's a made up word. It's a Lanita Corridor is a made up word for C1 and R4 because the other side of the coin was people who are reading this who haven't seen that are like, what's C1 and R4?
So in this document, It says R2. Is that a misprint or should it be R4?
If it is, that's a misprint. I'll change that.
Okay. So I was confused about what R2 was compared to R4. Okay.
And
Um,
I can send a map out to you, Anupam, too.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
I have,
great. Thank you.
I have one.
the other thing on the agenda was an update on the brochure and the window film. The Tillamook, I always forget the name of this, the tourist,
Tillamook Coast Visitors Association.
thank you. Tillamook Coast Visitors Association is printing the window film and the brochures for us and also the cover letter, and they're also paying the cost of sending it out. It's really a big, big ask of them, and they've agreed to do it. So the brochure is done. The window film was finalized and sent to the printer, and the printer sent back 2,500 copies of the window film that they did 2 years ago for Bay City.
Oh, oops.
Oops. So,
Not-
problem. So they've reprinted it, and I think they just finished it earlier this week. So they'll be working on it right after the new year and putting it all in packages and sending it to everybody who gets a water bill in Manzanita. So it's going to be a really nice thing. It had a little bit of a delay.
Great, super, thank you.
Great, yeah.
Great.
So
Yeah.
when do you expect it to be mailed, Joe?
Pardon?
When do you expect it to be mailed?
Sometime in January. My thought is it's a wonderful thing, but there's not exactly a rush since it's not
Right,
tourist season. So actually, the closer we get to tourist season, I think the better it will be because it'll be a little fresher in people's minds. So that's another thought. We could hold off on it till March or April if we wanted. Any thoughts about that?
that seems like a good
Might not be a
idea.
bad idea, just kind of have a run right before the tourist season and
Yeah.
even we can do some PR and knocking on some doors and share some information.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be tourist seasons all along, you know, so I would just.
That's pretty
get
true.
down, so.
Does it ever end?
Yeah, it doesn't ever end. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, thank you all very much. Next time, Michael and Anupam and I are going to meet before that. We're going to take what Patrick rewrote. We're going to take what you guys want, and next time, we're going to talk about a percentage cap and the pros and cons of that. And eventually we'll get someplace.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.